My cheating wife thought her affair would strengthen our marriage, but I had other plans for a decade. Sherry and I shared what I believed was a strong, unshakable marriage. She was my rock, my partner, and the person I trusted most in the world. We had weathered storms together, financial struggles, disagreements about careers, and the inevitable stresses that came with daily life. Through it all, I thought we had an unspoken agreement. We were a team, for better or worse. But over the past year, things began to shift. At first, it was subtle changes you could almost explain away. Sherry started dressing differently. She bought new outfits that didn't seem practical for work or casual weekends. Then there was the new perfume, a bold, floral scent she had never worn before. I asked her about it, and she laughed it off. "Just trying something new," she said. I wanted to believe her. For a while, I did. But soon, other things followed. She became glued to her phone, smiling at messages she never cared to share with me. Dinner conversations grew shorter, colder. She started coming home late, blaming a heavier workload and new office responsibilities. I convinced myself I was imagining things. After all, Sherry had never given me a reason to doubt her before. Until she did. When doubt turned into suspicion, the turning point came one evening when I decided to surprise her at work. It was a simple gesture. I thought bringing her dinner might cheer her up. But when I arrived, I found her office empty. The lights were off, her desk cleared. Confused, I called her. "Hey, I'm just finishing up at the office," she said, her voice calm and casual. "That's funny," I replied, my heart sinking. "I'm here right now, and it's locked up for the night." There was a long pause on the other end. "Oh, I must have forgotten to tell you," she stammered. "We had an off-site meeting. I'll be home soon." That lie confirmed what I had been too afraid to admit. Something was very, very wrong. The evidence piles up from that moment on. I couldn't let it go. I started noticing every inconsistency, every excuse. She'd spend hours away with vague explanations, claiming she was out with friends I never saw. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, became glued to her side, always locked with a passcode I didn't know. One night, while she was in the shower, I tried to check her phone, but the lock screen wouldn't budge, and my stomach churned at the thought of what she might be hiding. When I confronted her, she turned it around on me. "You're being paranoid," she said with a sharp edge to her voice. "Do you not trust me?" Her deflection only made me more certain I was right. If she had nothing to hide, why act this way? Calling in the professionals, I decided to stop driving myself crazy with guesswork. That's when I hired Jake Sloan, a private investigator. He came highly recommended, a man known for his discretion and ability to uncover the truth. Meeting with Jake was a sobering experience. He listened patiently as I described the situation, his expression neutral but understanding. "We'll get to the bottom of this," he promised, handing me a contract. The following week felt like torture. Every time Sherry left the house, I wondered where she was going. Was she meeting him? What lies was she telling to cover her tracks? I told myself I was prepared for whatever Jake would find, but deep down, I wasn't sure. When the call finally came, Jake's voice was calm but serious. "I have what you were looking for," he said. "Do you want to meet in person? Or should I email you the report?" "Meet me," I replied. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The truth revealed. Jake handed me a folder filled with photos, messages, and details about Sherry's affair. Her work spouse, Todd, was more than just a harmless colleague. The photos showed them together holding hands at lunch, sitting too close during meetings, even sharing a kiss in the parking lot. The messages were worse. They spoke of stolen moments and secret plans. Todd had convinced Sherry that their relationship would somehow strengthen her marriage to me. "You'll feel more alive," he wrote in one text. "Your husband will see the difference." It made me sick. How could she believe this? How could she betray me and convince herself it was for my benefit? Preparing my response, Jake's final report included a crucial detail. Todd's wife was leaving town for the weekend, and Sherry planned to join him at a hotel. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was about to become physical. But Sherry and Todd didn't stop there. They had rehearsed a speech for her to deliver to me. She planned to come clean and convince me to accept her affair as a way to reignite our marriage. The arrogance of their plan was staggering. That's when I decided I wouldn't wait for her confession. I would confront her on my terms. The confrontation on Monday evening, I set the stage. I prepared dinner, lit candles, and poured 2 glasses of wine. When Sherry walked through the door, she seemed surprised by the effort. "This is nice," she said cautiously. "I thought we could talk," I replied. "Sit down." She hesitated, but obeyed. "Sherry," I began, my voice calm but firm. "Do you love me?" "Of course," she said quickly. "Why would you even ask that?" "Because love requires honesty," I said, sliding the folder across the table. "And you haven't been honest with me for a long time." Her face drained of color as she opened the folder. The photos and messages stared back at her, undeniable evidence of her betrayal. "I can explain," she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "Don't bother," I said. "I already know everything. I know about Todd. I know about your plans. And I know you thought I'd just go along with it." She started to cry, her excuses tumbling out in broken sentences. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just—" "You were just selfish," I interrupted. "You thought you could have it both ways. But you can't. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I handed her an envelope containing divorce papers. "It's over, Sherry. You and Todd can do whatever you want, but you won't do it while married to me." Walking away from that conversation was one of the hardest things I've ever done. For years, Sherry had been the center of my world. Letting go of her felt like losing a part of myself. But in the weeks that followed, I began to heal. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family, people who reminded me of my worth. I realized that staying in a broken marriage would have destroyed me. Sherry thought her affair would strengthen our marriage. Instead, it strengthened me. I told her I'd been reflecting on our relationship a lot and decided there was no point in dragging things out. I paused briefly to create tension, watching as Sherry stepped closer, her eyes fixed on me. "What's the matter?" she asked, curiosity tinged with concern. Bluntly, I told her, "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air. At first, confusion clouded her face, as if she couldn't quite register what I'd just said. Then, realization dawned. Shock, fear, and anxiety flickered across her expression, quickly giving way to something else, perhaps worry about her affair with Todd being exposed. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice shaky. "I don't love you anymore," I replied, keeping my tone steady. The weight of my words hit her, and I could see her struggling to comprehend. "You don't love me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, Sherry," I said firmly. "I've fallen out of love with you. I can't even pinpoint when it happened." That wasn't entirely true. I knew exactly when. But I wasn't ready to reveal that just yet. Her brows furrowed, and she stammered. "What are you talking about?" Her voice trembled, and for a moment I thought she might break down completely. Trying to soften the blow, I brought up the early days of our marriage, reminding her of the connection we used to share. Do you remember when we first got married? I asked. We used to do everything together. Lunches, pottery classes. You even convinced me to join you for that. It wasn't about the pottery. It was about sharing the experience with you. She nodded slowly, her expression nostalgic. I loved every moment of it, she murmured. We painted Christmas village buildings together, I continued. Even though it was tedious, we enjoyed it. Remember how we used to joke about whose would turn out better? They were always better than mine, she admitted with a faint smile, tears glistening in her eyes. But somewhere along the way, we stopped, I said, my voice growing quieter. We stopped doing the things that brought us closer. We stopped prioritizing each other. She protested. I never stopped loving you. My love hasn't dried up. I ignored her defense, pressing on. Do you remember how people used to say they envied our relationship? We were inseparable. We took long walks, held hands everywhere. Even if you went shopping for clothes, I'd be there waiting outside the dressing room. I didn't care about the clothes, I cared about being with you. Her eyes watered as she whispered, I thought we were happy. We were, once. I sighed, leaning back. But then things changed. You started claiming you didn't have time for lunch with me anymore. You said work was too busy, but that wasn't true, was it? You still made time, just not with me. Her face paled, but she stayed silent. We stopped coming home early for each other. We stopped making love. And when we did, it felt different, forced. You acted like it was just another chore to check off your list. That's not fair, she said, her voice defensive. I thought you didn't want me anymore. I laughed bitterly. No, Sherry, I wanted you. I just didn't want that version of you. The one who didn't care, who wasn't even present. It was like you wanted it to be over as fast as possible, so you could move on to more important things. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away. I still care, she murmured. Maybe, I said. But actions speak louder than words, don't they? We stopped sharing anything meaningful. You started going to bachelorette parties, and I started going to poker nights. We spent entire days barely saying a word to each other. The love we once had, it's gone. Tears spilled down her cheeks now. I don't want this, she said, her voice breaking. I thought we'd grow old together, travel, take dance classes, just be together. So did I admitted. But somewhere along the line, we lost that dream. And you know why, don't you? I stared into her eyes, waiting for her to respond. Her silence was deafening. I leaned closer, my voice cold. It's because you chose to share those things with someone else. Todd, wasn't it? Her eyes widened in shock, her breath catching. And just like that, the carefully constructed walls of denial around her came crashing down. I began by acknowledging the painful truth that we both carried from our pasts, the deep scars left by betrayal. Our previous spouses had hurt us, and despite the years, I had worked hard to ensure that I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. I looked at Sher, watching her closely. She knew this was true. Yet, as I expressed my dedication to not letting our relationship fall into those same traps, she fidgeted, avoiding my gaze. Her hands trembled, a subtle but telling sign of her guilt. The tension in the room was palpable, but I couldn't let it slide any longer. Sher finally spoke, her voice soft but sincere. She apologized for her previous accusations. Her tone carried a sense of guilt as she acknowledged how unfairly she had judged me. She said that deep down, she knew I would never engage in such behavior. But even as she said it, she couldn't hold my gaze. It was clear there was more beneath the surface, something she wasn't ready to face yet. With a sigh, I steered the conversation in a new direction. I suggested that we wait until after the divorce to be together for the first time. My words were purposeful, hinting at a new love interest. Sher's expression shifted slightly, her eyes darting around as she tried to piece together what I was really saying. She was silent for a moment, as if unsure how to respond. I let the pause hang in the air, watching her struggle to find the words. Finally, I dropped the bombshell. I had met with my lawyer and finalized everything. The divorce was happening, and Sher would be served the papers on Friday. She asked in desperation if I was serious, and I confirmed with an unwavering certainty that she would indeed be served. The smile I struggled to hide came to my lips. The finality of it all was both liberating and painful. Trying to keep the situation under control, I explained that this decision was for the best, that it would allow both of us the chance to regain our freedom. I added that the last 10 years had been a waste of time, though I quickly corrected myself. The years hadn't been a waste for me. I'd grown, learned, and understood a lot about myself. Sure didn't respond to that. Instead, I looked at her, knowing deep down that she likely felt the same way, even if she wouldn't admit it aloud. I suggested to Shore that she had probably wanted this divorce as much as I did, even if she hadn't voiced it. I pointed out that she hadn't seemed to want to be with me for a long time now. She had distanced herself emotionally and physically from me, and I wondered aloud if our wedding had been a mistake in the first place. Sher's eyes widened with shock, and she immediately objected, shaking her head vigorously. She insisted that she still loved me, that she had never wanted a divorce, and that she wanted to stay married forever. But the truth had already been laid bare. I responded with a cold finality, saying that I no longer loved her. The words were harsh, but they were the reality. I reminded her that we were in a no-fault divorce state. The division of our assets would be simple. They would be split equally. No messy legal battles. No dragging this out. Unless, of course, one of us had committed infidelity, and there was no evidence of that. I proposed that we split everything down the middle: money, property, and belongings. I mentioned the next steps: visiting the bank the following day to begin the process, opening new accounts, getting new credit cards, and changing the utility bills. I told her that we would need to sell the house, and I'd already contacted a realtor to schedule it to go on the market on Wednesday. I knew this would be a lot for her to absorb, and I could see the panic starting to creep into her expression. Sher's face fell, and she began to object again, overwhelmed. She asked me to stop, her voice cracking as she started to cry. It hurt to see her like this, but there was no turning back. I reassured her that I had already packed my things and would be staying at a hotel for the time being. I suggested that she stay in the house until it was sold. That was the most reasonable option for both of us. But Sher wasn't ready to let go. She shouted at me to wait, her voice filled with desperation. I told her there was no time to waste, that we needed to move quickly and handle everything before Friday. She was still confused, not understanding the urgency. She asked what made Friday so important, and I responded in the calmest voice I could muster. I casually mentioned that Friday was the day she had planned a date with Todd, her boyfriend. The realization hit her hard, and her face froze. I smiled inwardly, knowing I had her now. I pulled out a folder from my bag, holding up the private investigator's report. I showed her the section detailing her plans with Todd, including their reservation at the Gaylord, Texas for that night. Sher's eyes widened as she tried to explain, but I cut her off, mocking her attempts to justify it. I reminded her of the photos of her and Todd kissing at lunch earlier that week. Sher's tears flowed freely now, and she couldn't look me in the eye. She apologized quietly, but my face remained stone cold as I declared, Now I remember exactly when I stopped loving you. I told her it was the day I discovered her plan to betray me, to put me in the exact situation I had been in with my ex-wife. The feeling of being a fool. Sure scrambled to apologize, desperately trying to convince me that she didn't love Todd. She claimed the rendezvous with him was only a fling, a misguided attempt to rekindle our relationship. She said after their night together, we'd have passionate love again. I counted, questioning how sleeping with someone else would help us reconnect. How could that possibly bring us closer? She tried another angle, saying that Todd had told her it would be okay, that I would be fine with it if it made her happy. I shook my head, saying I wanted her to be happy with me, not with another man. I couldn't understand how she thought I would accept that. Sure tried to justify it further, claiming it wouldn't be cheating if I gave her permission, but I made it clear that it would never happen. Not now, not ever. I expressed my disbelief that I had allowed myself to get to this point, to a place where I felt lonely and bored in my own marriage. I admitted that Todd had sparked my interest again, but I also acknowledged that I should have fought harder to fix what was broken between us. Sure, caught in her guilt, blamed me for not being more present, for cutting us off and not making time for lunch or quality moments together. She said I had distanced myself and that I was the one who put myself in this situation. I didn't respond immediately, knowing that it was too late to fix things now. She begged for forgiveness, promised to change, even said she would quit her job to never see Todd again. But I told her it was too late. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal of everything we had once shared. She pleaded, saying she loved me, that I was everything to her. But I couldn't let her words sway me. As she continued to cry, I reminded her that she had Todd now, the man she thought could fix everything. When Shore revealed that Todd was married and only wanted a physical relationship, I couldn't help but grin. I informed her that Todd's wife and I had used the same divorce lawyer and handed her a folder containing the full investigator's report, complete with pictures of her and Todd. I advised her to read it carefully. Shore begged me not to take these actions, but I was already walking out the door. Her cries echoed in my ears, but I didn't look back. I had made my decision. The next few months were tumultuous. Shore struggled with the reality of our divorce, but we eventually agreed to marriage counseling. The sessions surprised me. They opened up lines of communication that had long been shut. Shore began to see where she had gone wrong, and I expressed the hurt she had caused me. We worked through our issues, and after a few sessions, we made progress. We started reconnecting, rediscovering the love we had lost. Shore changed jobs, and we even started commuting together. We did everything together, from taking ballroom dance classes to decorating for Christmas. It felt like we had turned back time. And then, one night, as we were cuddling on the couch watching You've Got Mail, Shore kissed me gently, tears welling in her eyes. Before I could respond, she whispered, "You're going to be a daddy." I smiled, wiped her tears away, and playfully mimicked Tom Hanks from the movie. Don't cry, shop girl. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. This, the happiness we had finally found again, was the happy ending I had always wanted. Wow, what a journey we've just experienced together. I hope you were just as hooked as I was throughout the entire story. The emotions, the twists, and the dramatic reveals each moment led us closer to that shocking truth. It's always intriguing how life unfolds, how people make choices that forever change the course of their relationships and their futures. In this story, we've witnessed not just betrayal, but growth, redemption, and the difficult yet necessary decisions that come with facing the truth. Now, before we end this chapter, I want to take a moment to remind you of something. If you enjoyed this story, If it kept you at the edge of your seat, please take a second to show some love. Hit that like button, it really helps us out and lets us know we're bringing you the kind of content that you want to see more of. If you found yourself moved by the emotions in this story, or even if it got you thinking about your own relationships and experiences, share this video with your friends or anyone who might appreciate a good tale of love, betrayal, and redemption. You never know who might be going through something similar and could use a bit of insight or just an engaging story to take their mind off things. But that's not all. If you want to see more stories like this, whether they're heartwarming, heartbreaking, or full of shocking twists, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We've got a lot more content coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. When you subscribe and hit that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever we post something new. No need to wait around for the next big plot twist. We'll send it straight to your feed. And for those of you who are already subscribed, thank you. Your support means the world to us. You're the reason we keep pushing out these stories and making sure they're better with every episode. We love reading your comments, hearing your thoughts, and discussing the twists and turns with all of you. If you haven't commented yet, feel free to drop your thoughts below. Let me know what part of the story you found the most shocking, or if you have any predictions for future episodes. I love reading your feedback and responding to as many of you as I can. And lastly, we're not just a channel, we're a community. So if you haven't already, make sure to follow us on our social media pages too. We're sharing sneak peeks, behind-the-scenes updates, and fun bonus content over there. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's a great way to stay connected, join the conversation, and get involved with us beyond the videos. So, to recap, if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss out on any of our content. We've got so much more in store, and we can't wait to bring you the next chapter in our journey together. Thank you again for watching, for your support, and for being part of our amazing community. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and keep believing in the power of a good story.